until now. All right. So congratulations on you guys, particularly the founding members, and Ino and Maxine, you were also there last year as committee members, and I think it would be a good idea if you send a more recent picture also to SEG to put on their website.
Okay, I'll do that as soon as I get the chance.
Okay. All right. So I always call exploration a casino because few beat the odds. In a casino, you're bound to lose in the long run, and exploration is very similar. Now, the first question is who wants to own a mine? And it's from the large scale, the multinational mining companies, but over the past 20 years, they have not explored as much anymore, and they tend to buy the projects with their own money. Then you get the venture capital, the stock exchange type companies, and they seek financing through conferences, advertising, roadshows, etc. And these two categories on top are where most geologists find a work, and usually as employees, and build up their experience within these larger companies. Now, the other categories are more private people, and I think this is pretty much where we are, where this desire to look at how are we going to own our own mine. The most famous prospector is arguably Hans Merensky, who explored in the early 1900s in South Africa. He found the Free State goldfields. He found the the Bushveld complex. After him is the Merensky Reef named. He also found the coastal diamonds, Alexander Bay, and then obviously the Namibian diamonds, which have been the cornerstone of Namibia's economy for such a long time. Then one can look at prospectors who might explore for medium scale or small scale mines. Now, medium scale, one requires technical knowledge and financing, because very rarely does one have the financing to open up a mine. Whereas a small scale we have a lot of small scale miners in Namibia. They often lack technical knowledge, and the returns are also very small. They often live hand to mouth, and it's often not a very profitable income. Worldwide, especially in Central Africa and in South America and parts of Asia, you get artisanal groups that mine on unlicensed deposits, and very often alluvial gold or diamonds are mined in this way. And lastly, I've put in here the opportunist. The opportunist seeks loopholes, especially in the law, where you can edge in and make a fast buck. And in Namibia, I think we have a number of opportunists who have cornered this market niche. So for today, we'll focus on medium scale mining, particularly because that's where I'm trying to head, and to a certain extent, small scale mines that we have in Namibia. So, what do you need to own your own mine? Well, first of all, you need an idea that nobody else considered. Essentially, this heading could also be, how can you be better than anybody else? You need a certain amount of luck. You need lots of energy. You need knowledge, networking, teamwork, perseverance, and money. and you need a prospect. So we're back to here. What do you need to own your own mine? As Albert Einstein said, a man should look for what is and not for what he thinks should be. So we have to be realistic about what we want and what we can do. And this is fundamentally, this list is what you need to own your own mine. So what type of mine could you own? So with little money, and because we are not multinationals with a huge amount of money, essentially we'd be looking for a small mine. We need something with high value ore, so high grades. We need direct shipping ore. Direct shipping means that you do not have a very complicated processing plant that you need to build. For example, precious or semi-precious stones, as is done in Namibia. Massive ore that you can send directly to the smelter, or some industrial minerals. If you can't have that, at least have some easy processing, such as density separation. Or, in my case, we'll get to that a little bit later, something which is at least moderately easy to process. So, if you have a prospect, so what now? You need the mineral rights. In Namibia, minerals belong to the state. That is a fundamental principle. So you apply to the government, to the state, for prospecting licenses. And in the application, you need to put in a prospecting program. And in that program is also how much you're going to spend on it. You need to apply for a mining license if you have found the deposit. Or if you're a Namibian, as we all are, I think, Namibians can apply for mining claims, which is an easier path towards mining. Now, the license award is subject to environmental clearance. You cannot start any work, and actually the license is not awarded if you do not have an environmental clearance certificate. So once the license is awarded, progress needs to be reported monthly for a mining claim or a mining license, quarterly for an EPL, biannually for the environmental report, and annually for virtually all licenses. And expenditure on the license needs to be as per the proposed program. Then you need a written agreement with the landowner. And private landowners are getting really sticky about going onto their land. And when you work on government ground, you need permission from the government in the case of resettlement farms, or in case of state land, or in the case of communal land. I've done some previous presentations on and called it the rocky road to project development. So once you have a project, this is where it becomes exciting. But go into it knowing that there are pitfalls to open your mine. Maybe there's technical complexity that you have not considered before. Can you do project funding without losing a majority of your share? Because you cannot go it alone on a reasonably sized deposit. Can you produce a saleable product? It's all fine and well to produce a product, but can you sell it? How much security is required? Because mistakes will make you bankrupt. sometimes you do all that work, and when you get there, the commodity prices fall and the project can't go ahead anymore, and you have to wait for the next market upswing. So you're ready for takeoff on your mine. You've found that the planned mine is profitable, you have technical knowledge, and you decide to either go it alone and retain all of it, which means that you have to operate within the capital that you have yourself, or you seek a partner and you maintain a large shareholding, or you seek a major partner where you lose most of your shareholding. And if you have insufficient technical knowledge, you definitely need to seek a major partner with expertise. So now I'd like to take you through a project which I acquired. It's called SIB. It is south of Dordrecht. It's a copper project. It's a small to medium-sized copper project. All the licensing is in place, and I've spoken to the farmer. I've conducted a lot of the work myself to add value. I've conducted exploration. I've calculated the resources. I've done sampling. I've done metallurgical test work, and I've analyzed the financials to see whether it is profitable. I'm currently also still seeking a suitable partner. I've done a huge amount of test work, metallurgical test work. If this had been done in Mintec in South Africa, it would have cost millions. So the more you do yourself, the more you can add value to your project. And on the right-hand side are some of the products that I played with, either copper plate or copper sulfate, or what is called copper cement, which is copper oxide, and various methods to achieve these. And there is some silver in it, and the silver price has recently gone up, so that might also be worth getting out, but that needs more test work. So what did I still require for test work, for the project? We drilled for water, and we found some. It's great, tick. We drilled more core for metallurgy, and we did that, tick. Geotechnical studies for infrastructure, yes, we did that. And we did a drone, we flew a drone to measure the topography. But I still don't have money. And the core was great, it looks good. We did a mine plan, and the resource. This is a mining inventory, so down to 25 meters, which is a very shallow mine. There are about 534,000 tons at 0.92% copper, which is not very high grade, but it is easy to beneficiate. So this is the processing flow sheet. Comminution is another word for crushing, I suppose, and crushing and sieving, screening. And then agglomeration is a process whereby you make little balls out of, you create little balls so that the heap can leach more easily. And from there, it goes into a solvent extraction pond where an oil attracts all the copper into the oil, and then you have a stripping cell whereby you put in strong acid where you strip the copper back out of that oil. And the reason for that is because you get low grade copper in the solution coming out of the heap, But when you go into the electrowinning cells, you need a high-grade solution. Then I actually had a very decent partner. I was very happy with them, but the financial squeeze hit in about a year ago, and they told me no, they have no money. So I was very disappointed, and was this the end of the road? But with renewed vigor, need to look for suitable partners. And it's back to this. I need luck, vitality, further knowledge, networking, teamwork, perseverance, and money. So finally, vision without action is just a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. And vision with action can change the world. And that was a saying by Nelson Mandela. So guys, I hurried through this a little bit because we started so late. So I'd like to open the floor for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Karl. That was a very amazing presentation.
Okay, thank you, Eno. I wonder if anybody has any questions that they would like to pose.
Yes, the floor is open for anyone who has questions. You can either put your hand up and we get to you, or you can type your message in the chat box and we can go through them one by one.
Can I just talk? Can I just ask my question?
Yes, go ahead.
Sure, please carry on.
Karl,
Ideally, if you could put your hand up, and then at the bottom there's a hand. But since you've already started talking, great. Yes, please continue.
okay, I think a few months ago, the government had put a moratorium on the exclusive prospecting licenses applications. I don't know until when, but I think if you have an idea, it would be great to hear. And what do you advise one can do at this time?
Okay. Yes. There's a lot of cleanup to do. This is what I gather. They wanted to get a few processes in place and felt it was best to have a 9-month moratorium, which I think would end in about August, where the ministry has some time to decide which way they want to go in terms of license issuing. So ideally, that term would end in August. The minister would like it to end earlier, but it remains to be seen when that moratorium will end. So in the meantime, it is only people who already have licenses that can continue with a license. So all the applications, all new applications are on hold. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. But in addition, does that moratorium apply to mining claims too?
I believe it applies to EPLs, exploration licenses, and mining claims, I believe, one can still continue.
All right, thank you very much for your answers.
Yes, Solomon.
Hi, Karl. Just a quick question. I was wondering, what are the sources of funding for Namibian projects. So if you are a Namibian project, where does one start looking for finance within the country?
Yes, Solomon. There are a few institutions. Unfortunately, the SME Bank is basically non-existent. But there are a number of companies that are prepared to look at even small-scale mining, but it has to be something that is imminently profitable. The Namibians generally shy away from projects that require significant exploration or a lot of research that still has to go into the mine. Yeah, the Bank of Namibia, they have never supported any mining operations to date. I believe they are also keen to do that, but there's a bit of a vacuum since the SME Bank dropped out.
I understand. And what about, you've spoken about debt, but what about equity, streaming, royalty financing, more boutique types of financing? Are they available in Namibia? And my follow-up question is, what is the state of the Namibian Stock Exchange? Is it likely that at some point in the future, people will be able to list their companies and do IPOs, but sourcing Namibian equity on the stock exchange? What are your thoughts on that?
Certainly, you can do that now, but you're not going to do an IPO in Namibia unless there's a lot of certainty. Namibians tend to be very risk averse. So most of the time, one would look at South Africa and further afield for financing because you get much larger funds, and particularly mining funds. As I said, in Namibia, Namibians tend to be risk averse. So it is really, I've found it very difficult. I had a partner, Namibian partner, but unfortunately the funding became a problem. So the reality is one needs to look outside Namibia.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay.
We seem to have a question in the chat box for you, Karl.
In the chat box. Okay, let me find the chat box. Whoa. Okay, which one? Where my chat box seems to have disappeared.
Okay, I can just read the question to you. The question goes, how does leaching work? Is it a sequential method? A brief description would be appreciated. They're asking how does leaching work, and is it a sequential method?
Okay, for that question, I will go back to, first of all, on the left-hand side is, well, what I can call a simple garage method of testing leaching. Within these sewerage pipes is a sample, a representative sample of rock. And so what happens, there's, you pour acid or pump acid from a little pump up into the top of the pipe and drip it through slowly. And that solution has sulfuric acid in it. For copper, sulfuric acid is adequate. For some other leach methods, you need different solvents. So in this case, sulfuric acid, which slowly percolates through the pipe down to the bottom and it collects at the bottom. Now, what is very difficult to see here, there's a little container in there with electric wires coming out. So there is a potential difference that you put in, and copper being copper 2+, right? And the sulfate being SO4 2-. The copper will collect on the negative cathode. And so the copper goes onto the plate, and the acid is regenerated, and you put it back. So this circulates through the system. And exactly the same way you would do that in a bigger process. Let me go back to the cartoon. Basically, you have the run of mine, and you crush it. Okay, let's leave the agglomeration out of it. And then you put that onto a heap, and you sprinkle sulfuric acid onto it, H2SO4. Sprinkle it on, and then it slowly percolates down onto the bottom, and you collect it. It leaches copper out of the rock, and then it goes through a system of enrichment. And by taking copper out, you put hydrogen, the H2 ions, back into solution. So you re-acidify the solution, and that goes back onto the heap leach. So this is a circuit that works on its own. There are a number of there are other elements that get dissolved, like iron and so on, that consume the acid. So you have to continuously add a little bit of acid. But in general, you just circulate the acid and the copper through the system. Does that answer the question?
I believe it did. However, now we can move on to the next question in the chat box. So the next question comes from Mr. Agnolo, who says, can you please share the high-level path to enter the Namibian Stock Exchange?
A high-level path to enter the Namibian Stock Exchange?
Yes.
Well, essentially, to enter the Namibian Stock Exchange, you need an existing operation. Otherwise, the Namibian Stock Exchange will be highly unlikely to float an IPO, an initial public offering. As I said, Namibians tend to be very risk averse. They would not go and put their money in to a project where they are not sure of their returns. I'm not sure into what detail you would want the process towards an IPO. It's really all in the presentation of a profitable operation that you need to present before you can list on the stock exchange.
All right, thank you very much. And our next question comes from Ismail, who in the chat box asks, what is the best way to network? Like conferences you would recommend for Namibian EPL owners to attend in order to attract investors?
Yes, correct. Networking can also be done through the Geological Society. It can be done through various societies. And what is very difficult, especially for a younger person, who is not known amongst people who have money, it's very difficult to make the present to approach people, because how do you approach people? You can't do it digitally, because it will just end up in the inbox. So I think small steps, societies, get in amongst people in the industry.
Okay, thank you. And I have our last question. The person raised their hand there in the participants list. I'm not sure who it is because the name is the same as the others, but if you can hear us, you can ask your question now.
Hi, I asked a quick question. My question is, okay, in 2011, Ipangelo Mining was set up, and their mandate was to enter into joint ventures with interested parties for exploration and mining projects. So my understanding is that Ipangelo, who had the mandate of taking care of strategic minerals such as copper, their responsibility was to help Namibian projects source funding and the like. But my question is the onus on individual Namibian EPL holders to find their own sources of funding? And to what extent is Ipangelo Mining involved in sourcing funding? So what is their remit exactly?
Currently, what Ipangelo is doing, it is sourcing partners for its own projects. They hold a number of EPLs, which they explore, but their funding is very limited. And to my knowledge, they have to date not engaged in funding somebody else's project. What they have mostly been doing is approaching existing operations for a share in to fund themselves. So it is unfortunately not been an institution that will assist Namibian mining entrepreneurs. But I think if somebody has a project which is potentially viable, I think it's worthwhile speaking to Ipangelo to see if they would be interested in joint venturing.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I believe
I see a hand up.
Yeah, I also see the hand up, but the person isn't responding. However, we do have a question in the chat box. Maybe we can make this our final question for the meeting. So the question comes from Mr. Agnolo. He asks if will you allow to be contacted for advice in the future?
Okay. Let me put it this way. Generally, if I don't know somebody, I will not open an email. I think you're all aware that there's a lot of spam, and there are also viruses and all sorts of things that can come your way. So if somebody would like some advice, I would prefer if it maybe is routed through you, Ino, if it is somebody from from UNAM. But generally, I would not respond to people's names that I do not know.
Yes, I agree with you. Maybe if anyone wants to contact you, they can come through the UNAM SCG, and then we can pass the message along.
Yes, that would be useful. Because I will definitely answer you, Ino, but not necessarily somebody that I have not met.
All right, all right. And okay, it looks like Hallelujah has a question. We can make her question the last. Hallelujah, you can ask your question now.
Thanks, Carl, for the presentation. I have a question, and this is more on your opinion of what you think can be done. In Namibia, we have licenses that are owned, and I don't think a lot of work are being done on those licenses, for example, because some of the grants are really good grants, and there are people that would want to do work on those licenses, but because they are taken, you can't really do much. And you get questions around, when are we making the next discovery in the country? And the question that I always ask people is, there are no land available for us to do exploration, right? Because if you go to the Flexi Cadastre, which is an excellent tool we have in Namibia, all those licenses are taken. You're able to see who owns it. You're able to see when it expires, you're able to see all the information. So my question to you is, what do you think can be done to make sure that people get access to land or ground that is interesting for them to do exploration? Because at times people don't do exploration because they don't have funds. And we know exploration is very expensive. So in terms of people that are wanting to do exploration, that have the money, how can we work together with people that have land and don't have money without taking advantage of each other? And by advantage, I mean without charging people ridiculous amounts to work on your license or making ridiculous conditions in place and things like that.
Hallelujah, that's a very pertinent question, and particularly now during this moratorium, because that is the exact reason why the moratorium is in existence. We have an extraordinary number of EPLs that have been taken out by people who have no funding. Now, in a way that is great, because we want to empower Namibians to be part of the future of Namibia. But in my personal opinion, I think this doesn't serve any purpose at all, because it's just delaying finding a new deposit, because deposits are found by people with money. You don't just walk across ground and then find a deposit, and hopefully somebody very soon will pay you an extraordinary amount of money to partner, which is basically the opportunist category that I was referring to earlier in the presentation. My personal opinion is it is counterproductive for Namibia as a whole, but it will give a select few people an opportunity to strike a deal with an international company who then provides the money. I'm not sure if I've answered that fully.
No, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, and with that being said, I believe we can bring this meeting to a close. I'll thank you again so much for the amazing presentation. I can't thank you enough, and thank you to everyone who attended. Your patience is really appreciated.
Well, my apologies for not for delaying that. So we had a bit of a hitch, but and thanks everybody for their patience and for an amazing turnout.
Yes, thank you, thank you. But before we end the meeting, I also wanted to announce that if everyone can take a look at the chat box, I just shared a link for the upcoming Earth Day Symposium being held on the 22nd of April. So I really suggest everyone register for that symposium because it'll be a really interesting symposium to attend. And with that being said, I'd like to thank you, Karl, and thank everyone here for attending.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.